Welcome back to Season 2, Episode 4 of the TURD Podcast, also known as the Trail Ultrarunning Race Directors Podcast. I'm your host, Shalini Bhajjan, and today I'm excited to welcome Jeremy Long, the founder and race director of Daybreak Racing, based in the Pacific Northwest. So let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast, Jeremy.
Hey, Shalini. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited. As I like to start these things, let's dive into who is Jeremy Long.
Oh, that's always a loaded question for sure. But I can just kind of go chronologically, I suppose. I'm a native Oregonian. I've lived in Oregon my whole life. I grew up in a small town on the Oregon coast west of Eugene back in the 1900s, as the kids say. I've honestly identified as, I guess, a runner most of my life. I started excelling in PE, I guess, in middle school or in elementary school. And I started really enjoying it and I guess seeing success in junior high and high school for sure in cross country and track. And I guess kind of the opposite of a lot of folks that I meet at our events who discover running later in life. I discovered it early and then I accumulated all my injuries early too. I feel like a war-torn veteran, I suppose, of running and all that. Yeah, so I went to college in Oregon. I ran briefly at the NAIA level, kind of very mid-pack as a runner, middle distance, and I was always kind of the utility guy. I could, keep up with a lot of the sprinters, but I could also, earn points at meets and stuff in longer distance. But in college, I studied health education, health promotion, and public health.
Yeah.
And then pursued a career. I moved up to the Portland area after college, and I've been here really ever since as an adult.
Gotcha.
About the past 25 years. I did a lot of health promotion work, and in particular, I did a lot of, you would call it environmental public health inspections. So I did a lot of regulatory work that involved a lot of administering permits and inspections of food safety for restaurants and school inspections and a lot of those types of facilities, and really kind of honed this community level thinking, I suppose, in terms of scale and planning and all that sort of stuff. And my wife and I had our kids in 2011. So that was really an era of me where I was in my early career, and being a parent and running took a ginormous backseat. And I really was not a runner essentially for much of my late 20s and early 30s.
Gotcha.
And as my kids got older and I really started to miss those running days and the obvious fitness and adventure and everything that came along with it and the social aspect, I started running with coworkers and joining trail running clubs and stuff. There's a really, even 20 plus years ago, there was a fairly rich trail running community in the Portland area. So got back into it. I started really, as a parent of young kids, the only free time you have for yourself is before sunrise, essentially, before they wake up.
Right.
And that kind of, I really, regained a lot of fitness over a few years. I started getting into some trail races and volunteering, and I found a lot of trails that a lot of people weren't really aware of throughout our region at that time.
Sure.
And really jumped into trail running and kept going longer and started hosting some, group runs and fat asses and stuff like that. Yeah. This is in like 2012 to 2015 era. And pretty soon the group runs went from, half a dozen people to fat asses with 70, 80. And me just taking a big step back and saying, wait, I need to do this correctly. This is a little too crazy for, just a, gathering of, potluck style fat ass and a bonfire type of deal. Eventually that, over the course of a year from 2015 to 2016 became our first event called Tillamook Burn. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay. Well, let's dial back to, let's say, your early age and earlier years. You said you grew up in Oregon. Is that pretty much where sounds like you've been stationed and, childhood all the way up until where you are currently? So Oregon's always been home, I presume, there?
Yep, totally. I mean, we I grew up road tripping and traveling and all those sorts of things. And I've have family all over the Northwest and a little bit in California growing up. So we got to make family trips and all that. But yeah, Oregon's always been home for the most part.
Gotcha. Kids, talk about kids. You mentioned 2 years. I'm assuming 2 kids.
Yeah. My daughter, she's 18. She's 2 weeks deep into her freshman year at the
Yeah.
University of Oregon. We're pretty proud of her. My son is a freshman in high school this year, and so we've got two freshmen in the house. It's kind of
Yeah.
funny.
A relief age, though, isn't it? I mean, the driving, you don't have to drive them everywhere and kind of sort of.
Yeah, it's not as crazy as it was when we're doing all the swim club and all of that stuff and friend visits and everything. But yeah, we're still in the thick of it. But with one of our kids out of the house, it already feels pretty weird for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And I mean, your time becomes your own after a period of time, and you're like,
Yeah,
I gotta find other hobbies,
yeah, I know. Because I
Yeah.
certainly don't want to work anymore.
Yeah,
I
it's like
always
hang
do,
out
I
with
should
these
say.
trail running weirdos enough.
Yeah, totally.
How about your wife? How long have you guys been married? Has she always been, she is also from Oregon area? What's that dynamic like?
Yeah. So we met in our 20s, 20 some years ago. She's a nurse
Yep.
by trade. We actually, unbeknownst to each other, grew up less than an hour apart. She grew up down in the North Bend Coos Bay area, an hour south of me. I grew up in Florence. And she went to Southern Oregon University. She's the nerd of our family, the straight A student. Studied abroad in Mexico for a year to really kind of perfect her Spanish. She's bilingual,
Sure.
and she's been a nurse her entire career. She specializes in um, kind of perinatal, new baby, new mom patients, and she's like a certified lactation consultant. So she's in the happiest spot she's ever been in her career, getting to see new babies every single day. So
Yeah.
that's her thing.
I mean, it's got to be satisfying on some level.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
she's
totally.
basically working, correct?
Yeah, she's at work, and I'm back home. I spent most of this morning at our we call it HQ, our warehouse, and I'm back home for this, and might take the rest of the day off. I'm not sure.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
So back to the school, you said out of college, your background's, if I understood this correctly, health and like kind of overseeing standards, correct?
Yeah, it was
Is that
so my degree was in health education and public
gotcha?
health. So it's it really matches my personality. I've always been kind of a person with I guess a broad range of interests, but
Yeah.
never any hyper focus in any specific category. So it was a really good match for my personality of
Yeah.
just always being more of a jack of all trades kind of identity. I like to do construction and trades and things, but I also really am fascinated by social sciences and natural sciences and stuff. So
Yeah.
public health merges a lot of that, a lot of.
So how
Mhm.
long before taking on race directing and I guess at the beginning inception of Daybreak, did you have a real life job, if you will?
Yeah, a real job. Yeah, I left my last year of grad school was 2004, and I started as an intern for county health department here in the Portland metro area. And basically, I started working there as a health educator, doing community education for high risk populations. And then I basically took a side, I moved positions a couple of years later into environmental health, which is more specifically more of a regulatory role in terms of food safety licensing and community drinking water systems and a lot of that type of work, and also involved some interesting stuff working with epidemiologists and the like, doing and nurses doing outbreak investigations when there would be a foodborne illness outbreak linked to a specific, perhaps restaurant, that was the common exposure for folks.
Yeah.
I would be the one that would go in and, basically do kind of a food safety audit and education and all that kind of thing to kind of identify what might be going on.
So quick.
So I did that from basically 2004 till 2019. That was my career as a in public service.
Yeah. So without deviating too far, that food safety component, how does that play into aid stations and races?
Ah,
Because I mean, that's got
yeah.
to be a part
You
of.
know, I was actually probably annoying to other race directors before I was a race director because when I would volunteer and stuff, I would just kind of hand them pamphlets,
Yeah,
about hand washing and don't touch the food with your bare hands type
yeah,
of
yeah,
stuff and all that. But, get a sneeze guard, that, all those things. So that's always been my, kind of origin perspective, I guess, in terms of how we do aid stations and, the finish line food and all that
sure.
kind of thing. So I feel like I have everyone's best interests at heart in terms of all that versus it being a sweaty NM's free for all.
I guess that degree is paying off.
Yeah, right.
Right. So let's dive into your own. You had said you've been a runner majority of your life. Were you running road or were you, I mean, being where you are, there's no lack of outdoors, I'm going to jump on a trail. So
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about how that journey kind of got into trail running. And you said you had joined a few clubs and like, what was that transition like? And at what point I know you said you had a bunch of group runs, fat asses. What point was Daybreak like, this needs to be my full-time focus,
My thing. So I grew up in Florence, Oregon, which is at the edge of North America.
Yeah,
Certainly in 1980s and 80s, before internet and all that
yeah,
stuff, we would, doing high school cross country, we had, dozens of miles of beach and trails and sand dunes and lakeshore trails and coast range mountain trails to choose from. We kind of took advantage of a lot of that stuff and
yeah,
really growing up in high school in the mid and early 90s before the internet, we didn't know what trail running was. We just called it, let's go run on those trails
yeah,
because that's fun. And we certainly did our fair share of, running in around town and in the city for cross country and track practice and all that kind of stuff. But, we were kind of, it really felt, certainly looking back, growing up in a rural town at the edge of the earth, it was a fairly isolated experience, but it was rich at the same
yeah,
time because we just, we had our own kind of identity. It's, small town community and support. And fortunately, we had guidance and coaches that knew what they were doing, and we had a lot of success.
yeah,
And it really helped, me kind of blossom in terms of my own identity and in knowing, who I was and what I liked, which, certainly looking back, I was pretty fortunate having the legacy of a nearby place like the University of Oregon and Steve Prefontaine's legacy, in Coos Bay and then Eugene, learning about all that stuff before the internet. You know, we were, I wouldn't say obsessed, but you're inspired to such a, fundamental level
yeah.
that it becomes part of you. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So,
Yeah, it's ingrained in your blood almost.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost like I don't know, not like a sense of pride, but like something that you identify with
Oh
that,
yeah, yeah,
really carries you. So.
yeah. So from there, I guess cross country. What was your first official race? Was it a road race? Was it a marathon? Like what distance where you were like, I want to test out what racing feels like?
Man.
Pretty extensive career as far as personal racing goes.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've kind of been racing as long as I've been running, just
Yeah,
because of school sports. So it just kind of was synonymous to me. I was fortunate in that I've always been kind of one of those outgoing introverts type of
yeah,
personality, but I've raced so kind of often in my life that it's not an anxiety inducing thing for me. So, and fortunately, for the most part, that carried over into race directing. I don't get terribly too anxious or debilitated by nerves and all that kind of thing. But anyway, my first races, outside of the structure of school growing up, I remember running the Steve Prefontaine Memorial 10K in Coos Bay that happens every September. I remember doing a bunch of other road 10Ks and 5Ks in my 20s. The Butte to Butte is on 4th of July in
yeah,
Eugene every year. kind of point to point from the south side of town to the north. I didn't run my first road marathon until I was well into my 50s, the Eugene Marathon. I did that one and bonked spectacularly at mile whatever,
Yeah.
22.
Yeah, never fails,
Jogged
right?
it in. Yeah. So I after that road race, that was kind of the signal to me of never doing another road marathon again, and I jumped straight into trail
Oh.
50Ks.
So Trail 50K, which one was your first? What was your first trail?
I had done a lot of kind of all day sort of endurance, I guess, efforts, if you will, or
Yeah.
something, adventure runs and whatnot for many years before that. My first official 50K race was the Volcanic 50 that
Yeah.
Gobion puts on around Mount St. Helens.
Yeah.
People thought I was pretty nuts for that being my first 50K because it's more like a 50 miler in
Yeah.
terms of
Yeah, that's
duration and
hard. Yeah.
challenge and isolation. But yeah, I volunteered at it that the very first year they hosted it, whenever that was, 2012-ish or something, and then I was inspired to give it a rip myself the second year.
Yeah. Yeah. So from that, of course, you've been racing. What was the transition from your own personal racing and, you had mentioned volunteering and kind of really diving into the community, the ultra running community? What was that turning point when you were like, I want to race direct, or this is my first race? How did Daybreak kind of came to life?
Yeah, kind of in that era I mentioned, sort of 2012 to 2015, once my kids weren't babies so much anymore, I really yearned for that outlet of running just to kind of keep my brain, uh, you know, on an even keel.
Oh,
Ask
yeah.
any runner, they know what I'm talking about. It's hitting that refresh reset button. So I started running before sunrise with a particular coworker. His name's Trevor. He hosts a bunch of his own races in Central Oregon area. We would run tons around here. We call them logging roads. A lot of
Mhm.
folks in other areas call them, just service roads or forest roads. But in the Coast Range in Oregon, it's mostly private timberland, and we just call them logging roads, and lots of long, steep grades. And we
Yeah.
would just go. We'd get up at 4 a.m., drive out there, run for an hour and a half, and drive home, clean up, and go to work.
Yeah.
And that was kind of how I lived for at least 4 or 5 years for my running. And occasionally on the weekends, I'd get people together and we'd go out and we'd run trails in the Tillamook State Forest, which is in the Coast Range between Portland and the coast.
Yeah.
And nobody knew any of those trails out there, hardly at all. But they're spectacularly well maintained and good quality trails and
Sure.
challenging and beautiful. And it just kind of snowballed. I, would bring more and more people out there from Portland and other, friends that I'd meet at races and other, through friends of friends and all that sort
Sure.
of thing. And that kind of became the group run part. And then, just volunteering at races and helping out others. And like I had mentioned already, I'd, done a lot of adventure all day sort of runs out in the woods and all that stuff. So um, I I've been hiking and doing that for a long time and really familiar with really cool areas across
Sure.
Oregon, Washington, etc. So a lot of these morning races just became conversations about dreaming up cool races.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with a family at home and a full-time job and a 75-year-old house to maintain and all that stuff, I didn't have any time or anything to put on a race, very far away. So obviously that was the main reason that Tillamook Burn became what it is in 2016 as
Yeah.
our first race with the 50 miler 50K. I started it small, but it still sold out, and it was a beautiful weekend, and immediately led into the second year of that. And in 2017, and I also got a permit to host Backcountry Rise as our second event in the Mount Margaret Backcountry area on the north side of Mount St. Helens. So, and then the third year became our Mount Hood race that I added. I say we, but I'm really just mean me back then. So in that race, I connected with Mount Hood Meadows, the ski area, and had a course that followed a bunch of ridge lines and finished up on the mountain. And anyway, so long story short, I just added one race per year for 4 or 5 years in a row. And then my wife and I had the conversation, you can't keep living this way and, have a healthy family and time for, all of my commitments and everything, and needed to pick one. and it was either going to be race directing or it was going to be my county health job. It started out as a side gig, and I didn't want to keep doing what I was doing at the county, so it was an easy transition. So I resigned from that job in October 2019. I would say that was that, but then March 2020 came around, and then it was COVID. So yeah, that was my first experience in canceling a string of races in a row, as most of us probably are aware.
So I'm assuming you didn't have to go back to work. I mean, were you able to still sustain race directing through 2020, 21? Because I know 21 was still a huge transitional year for a lot of us.
Yeah, my wife being a nurse, we had kind of our basic needs met, as far as having some steady income and, health coverage and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of the income that I had, well, the minimal income as a trail race director that you accumulate, I didn't, because I was working full time, I reinvested a lot of that money in gear and as, more or less reserve. At which ended up being, a good chunk of my income in 2020. So no, I did not go back to my prior job at all in 2020.
I always feel like, as since we are also racing and race directing, I feel like the money that comes in from race directing gets squandered on your own racing addictions. A lot of it. And that's what I blame it on. And that's why I'm perpetually broke.
Yeah.
So I guess that's how Daybreak came to life. Was there reasoning behind Daybreak, the drive?
Yeah, oh, sure. I mean, 100%. The name Daybreak came from those years of the only free time I had to run was before sunrise, So it was pure symbolism of my lifestyle at the time of, getting your run in before the sun came up. And Daybreak just, it's a good word and people remember it, and it has a lot of a good optimistic symbolism in the beginning of an adventure, in the day and all that stuff. So, it stuck, and I've used it ever since.
So before we dive into the meat of Daybreak, let's talk a little bit about your wife and how is that dynamic at home. Since does she like? I'm sure she enjoys the outdoors, because living where you are, you kind of almost have to. It's like passive. So, but because I always feel like ultra running, trail running, especially when you get into race directing, it's a very different lifestyle from your 9 to 5. You have a partner. What's that dynamic like? Is she out at events supporting, or is it more like you do your thing and I'm doing my thing? Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, I should start off by saying she would hate that we're talking about her, because she's a full on introvert. So no, she's amazing. I wouldn't be able to do this I would never have been able to even get into this without her support, with her just passion and expertise as a nurse, providing that stability for our family, for me to be able to put a foot into this very kind of unstable kind of career, I suppose. But she's always understood that I'm a runner, and I am a much better partner in person when I'm able to exercise and run regularly. So she's always been very supportive of that. She's not a runner. She really enjoys sport. Not so much lately, but for many, many years, she loved club soccer. She did a lot of soccer leagues, either with work or, city league, that kind of stuff. But she's definitely a naturally gifted athlete and super strong, but never really got into running. She's done a few races, more shorter stuff, kind of 5K, 10K distance type of smaller races and stuff. I think she tried to do it to force herself to see things the way that I do, in terms of how much I love trail running.
Just a little glimpse, right?
She enjoys it, but she likes that variety and team aspect of more traditional sports, I suppose.
Sure. What about your kids? Do either one of them run? What's their sort of? I always find my kids tend to just be like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. I hope that changes. As far as race directing, where are your kids as far as the community, and then also are any of them running?
My daughter, I'll just start with her, just since she's the older. She's always been I guess, interested in sports and athletics and whatnot. She was a 4-year letterman on the state swim team, or excuse me, her high school swim team, and she was the team captain the last 2 years. So super strong swimmer. I don't know where she got that from because she definitely didn't get it from me. So I'm attributing that as a mom trait that Kim, my wife, she just never. She swam, but never competitively the way that my daughter has. My daughter, she dabbled in cross country, didn't really care for it, other than just getting the cardio for swim season.
Yeah.
And but she did fall in love with track, and she really loved kind of doing what I did, 400, 800. Yeah. So, and had a lot of success her last couple of years of high school. She's done some trail, I guess, just gone on some trail runs with me.
Sure.
Nothing super far, nothing beyond 7, 8 miles per se, or nothing like doing an ultra or anything like that. But I think that's probably in the cards for her. She's just needs to work on her patience and figure out how to eat first and all that stuff and fuel. But my son, he's 14. He's a freshman in high school, and his current pastime is video games, and he's really good at it. We haven't quite
I think a lot of adult male
athlete itch yet.
Yeah.
So.
Well, cool. So now we go into Daybreak. You guys host 12 events annually. As I was kind of doing my little homework on the back end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Tillamook was your first ever event, and
Our original, yeah.
Yeah, and it's now is that your one and only 100-mile distance race? Because again, as I was kind of clicking through, walk me down, the different events that you're currently hosting, and it looks like you're front loaded. So the beginning of the year has pretty, events are pretty close together and right on top. So yeah, just talk to me a bit about that.
Sure, yeah. So I guess real quick, just going back to 2020 during COVID, I was able to use a lot of that year to kind of flesh out and develop a number of other events that I otherwise wouldn't have had time to do if we weren't kind of forced to not keep working and whatnot. Our schedule really grew significantly after 2021 and 2022. So we had 4 events scheduled in 2020. We hosted one, the Sayusla Dunes event. That's in my hometown in Florence. But after all the COVID stuff, we had 7 or 8 events, and then we've added obviously a few since then. And some get dropped, some new ones get added. So we've kind of been in that 10 to 12 per year the past few years now.
Okay. Is Tillamook your largest event, like of the 12 events that you call?
Oh, no, not at all. It's actually one of our smaller events. It's staged in a campground, so and it doesn't have a tremendous amount of parking, which is obviously one of the main limitations when it comes to getting permitted is what's your parking plan. But yeah, it's one of our smaller events. We get about 200 people per day for Tillamook. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so with Tillamook, and I know when you said when you started, you had about 50K and 50 miles, is that correct? But it has expanded since.
Yeah, it's expanded and contracted and changed a little bit over the years, and a lot of our events have.
Yeah.
And I guess that's largely reflective of, my interest in wanting to make things just improve the quality as much as possible with each event. I'm not one to keep a legacy distance exactly the same course for 20 years because that's what it is. I like to tweak things, or a new trail got built and it's better than our current section through that area. I want to incorporate that. That's kind of how my mind works, and balancing it with good access for aid stations and potential extraction points and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it started out as 50-mile, 50K. We brought in a 20-miler for a number of years, and starting next year, we dropped the 20-miler, and we're continuing with our point-to-point 50-miler, and the 50K evolves into a 55K.
Right.
Basically, the main reason that we decided to do that was the 50K has always been an out and back.
Yeah.
Which, a lot of people love out and backs. We love we like out and backs because it really creates a social atmosphere and, that sense of camaraderie and, people cheering each other on as
Sure.
they're going. But there's a loop at the south end, an 8-mile loop section at the south end of our 50K that we incorporated, and it adds 3 extra miles. So now it's a 5K lollipop. So be quite a bit less of the cross traffic on the course, and just kind of overall is a pretty great quality improvement.
And Tillamook is also your Western States qualifier. Is that correct?
Oh, no, we have 2 states qualifiers, which is the 100K at Gorge Waterfalls, and then our 100 at on Mount Hood. We call Hood 100, so kind of midsummer.
Yeah, so of the 12 events that you have, which one would you say is your most popular, pulls in the most number of athletes, and it's a big party?
Sure.
Yeah. Which of the events?
Our biggest event, kind of bar none, is Gorge Waterfalls in mid-April in the Columbia River Gorge. We produced that one in collaboration with Free Trail. They're kind of the the trail media company. So basically, with that event, we get about 450 runners per day for that, which for trail, is pretty significant, especially for an independent event. But super beautiful. We stage it in a huge park in the city of Cascade Locks, right on the banks of the Columbia River.
Yeah.
It's really crew accessible, and with that dynamic of our relationship with Free Trail for that race, and also for the Big Alta down in Marin County in the San Francisco Bay Area. We are basically the operations team. Daybreak is. We produce the event. We do all the logistics, permitting, all of the planning, course marking, the aid station volunteers and all that stuff. Free Trail does a lot of the more sponsorship side, and then they're the ones that pour gasoline on the fire, in terms of the hype and and amplifying the the event's presence, and to a point that is beyond our capability, as our race company. It really works out well, and those events have really exploded in growth over the past 5 years or so. It's been a really good one.
Yeah, is Gorge Falls the only event that you guys partner with Free Trails, or are they sort of involved in some of your other events as well?
So Gorge Waterfalls in mid-April, and then the Big Alta that we host a few weeks prior in March down in their neck of the woods in the north in Marin County. Yeah, same dynamic for those 2 events. We kind of collaborate and basically kind of co-own the rights to the events.
Gotcha.
All the rest are ours independently.
Yeah, so looking at the 12 events, give me a quick breakdown of what each event is, just like a quick snippet of it.
Oh, sure.
And then I also would like to know, I guess, I'm assuming you've been pretty hands-on involved with laying out the courses for all these events.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite job, or favorite part of the job.
Yeah, I do love that part. So we'll dive into, which of the courses that you've laid out and you've been on, and stuff. But run down the list of the events.
So we kick off our year with Siuslaw Dunes. March 7th, 2026 is the date for next year.
Sure.
Again, it's on the Oregon coast. It's Siuslaw is the native name for the region, the river around Florence, Oregon, the town that I grew up in. The area is most famous for it has the largest contiguous area of sand dunes in North America. If anybody is an ATV type of person, they've heard of the Oregon dunes.
Sure.
So we have 3 different races there: a 50K, a 20 miler, and a 12K, and they're all point to point. And we shuttle bus everybody from a big state park down to the far end, and then they run all the way back. It's a super fun one, but it's obviously kind of a niche race because some people, they see sand or dunes, and it's a polarizing thing for some people, I guess. Yeah. But it's really fun. It's a unique challenge. It's a super, super unique area to be at. There's nothing really like it, around. So it's our rust buster of the year. It's a good kind of dry run for us after, having the winter of no races and stuff. So because right after that, we immediately dive into two of our biggest races of the year. With the Big Alto, we drive down to Marin County, which is, the north end of the San Francisco Bay Area. It's, obviously a trail running mecca, trail running in the Marin Headlands, Mount Tamalpais, and all of that area is, fairly internationally famous for, for how epic it is with that California carpet type of trails and fire roads down there.
Yeah, and the terrain just varies. I ran Miwok.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's beautiful and just varies. You go 5 miles and it changes the topography.
Exactly. Yeah. And selfishly for our team, since it's that third weekend of March in Oregon, that is generally the beginning of spring break. So we bring our families and try to bring the families down, and we do the race and try to get down there and enjoy a little California sunshine.
Yeah.
Since their March feels a little bit more like our May in terms of getting some quality vitamin D.
Sure.
So after Big Alto, we zip back up to home, and it's Gorge Waterfalls time. It's by far, again, our biggest race of the year. It's also one of our closest to home, so that's definitely a huge bonus for us. It's 45 minutes from my house to get to the staging area for Gorge. It's a 3-day event, so it's really exhausting and taxing, being able to host a huge race 3 days in a row. But it's a big draw. The energy is pretty palpable. People come from all over the country and the world for Gorge, especially with the 100K being the Western States qualifier. And this past year, the 100K was also the Long Trail Team USA selection race. So we got a bump of extra attention from the elite athlete field from around the country and stuff. So that was exciting this past year. And a month later or so, we go back to where it all started with Tillamook Burn. That's kind of our, I don't like to call it our blue collar race, but it's definitely it's kind of that deep in the woods, our workhorse race, tried and true. It always sells well. People love the camp vibes, and we get a lot of post-race feedback from folks that say that was like the coolest thing I've ever done. I'm so hooked on the trail community.
Yeah.
Just being able to run a cool, pretty race, have a food cart burrito at the finish line, and then just hang out and chat and visit around the campfire for 2 hours or whatever. It's a great experience. That's in mid-May, yeah. And then we go into halftime for us, which June, and I'm referring to our 2026 calendar. June and July next year, we have kind of a gap, and that helps us be able to reset and have some personal time and clean up our warehouse from the craziness of the spring. And because honestly, we want to give our 100 as much attention as it deserves. It's entering its third year in 2026 for 100.
Yeah.
And in year two, this summer, it went from being a 100 finisher race for its inaugural in 2 years ago to selling out in 7 weeks at 300 people. Anyway, we kind of it's a great race. It's got a super awesome staging venue at Mount Hood Meadows up high on the volcano.
Sure.
And a lot of great crew access, and the farthest distance on the course from the staging area is 30 minutes away. So it's really accessible in terms of like Pacific Northwest races. That's pretty exceptional, I guess, in terms of access and just ease of travel and logistics and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We bounce right back up to Mount Hood 2 weeks later for Y-East Trail Fest. It's probably our second largest event. We've got the scale of the ski area to stage from. It's a point-to-point 50-miler, point-to-point 50K, and then a series of loop races that are shorter, 28K, which was Golden Trail Series race a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And some shorter, really verty.
So I ran Y-East in, I think it was 19. It was my training build up to UTMR.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so it then, of course, it was the word and also where I needed to be for training. So I remember running 100K. And as I was kind of, scanning through the website, I noticed the distance is no longer. When did that go away? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so we did the 100K at Y-East 3 years, I believe. I think it was 2019, and then obviously 2021 and 2022, I believe we kept the 100K. and it evolved into more of a big lollipop course. And obviously, we wanted it to, grow to the point where it could be a Western States qualifier and,
Yeah.
kind of reach that standard. And then, you get a lot broader buy-in from folks who want to jump in the race, and you see a lot more growth, et cetera. But we never really got there with the 100K at Y East. I really couldn't put my finger on why. It was a great course, and well supported and organized and stuff. So we dropped it in 2023, I want to say. And the reason that I did that was there was some construction stuff going on at some of the trailheads that we used as aid stations, so it was going to make it really logistically challenging.
Yeah.
And we used that opportunity to rebrand. Originally, Y East was called the Y East Howl. That's what we called the event back then. I rebranded it into Y East Trail Fest, and we kept everything within the ski area boundary. And they built a bunch of new trails that went way up high into the Alpine. And so we kind of rebranded the event because of these significant changes to the course.
Sure.
And we've stuck with 50K and the shorter distances for a couple of years. And then also kind of parallel with that rebranding of that event was committing to Hood 100, which essentially became a super mega version of that Y East Howl 100K.
Yeah.
With Hood 100, we really saw some pretty immediate success and hit that Western States standard of the certain number of finishers that first year, and it exploded after that.
So that's Y East is mid-August, and what's after that quickly?
So for 2026, we have Backcountry Rise at the end of August. That's our Mount St. Helens backcountry race. That one's in the northern blast zone area of the volcano. Tons of epic views, a lot of backcountry ridgeline running and alpine lakes and peaks and all that kind of thing. Super mile for mile. It's probably our most scenic course, people will say, but it's also our most remote course, so it's really challenging. We have a new one coming on September 12th, and I can't really say too much about it because we haven't announced it officially yet. And that takes up our September. And October is always a super busy month for us. Partly because my brother Aaron, my co-director, and I, we're just spring and fall people. It's our favorite time of the year, and it just, you just want to share it with everybody. So that's where we pack a lot of our events. Our final event on the coast is called Perpetua Coast. We staged that, and it's about a half hour north of Florence in a small coastal village called Yachats, and it goes throughout the Cape Perpetua scenic area on Forest Service land there. And the next event after that, mid-October, is Rogue Gorge. It's on the Upper Rogue River, kind of between in southern Oregon, kind of downhill from Crater Lake National Park as you descend down towards like the Medford Rogue Valley area. Super incredible fall colors along the Rogue Gorge course. It's also our fastest race of the year, and since it's a river trail, so really mostly cruisy. Forested river trail single track on that one. Really great camp vibes. And then we wrap up our year with a newer event. It's new this year, called Thunder River, and we built that one basically kind of to offset Gorge Waterfalls. It's staged in the same location in Cascade Locks in the gorge, kind of as like a kid brother opposite side of the calendar type of opportunity with a lot, some of the same trails and some newer ones too. So
So between the 12 events or what you're hosting for 26, just looking at it, it looks like every event is in a unique area, has a unique component to it. Are there any events that are kind of overlapping at all? Or is it like each race, if somebody's coming from the outside and they're like, I don't want to run something that,
I've already done, or sure. So all of them are definitely, very intentionally its own unique experience and by and large in a different location. As I mentioned, Gorge Waterfalls and Thunder River share the same staging area and some of the same overlapping trails. And then Hood 100 and Y East Trail Fest's 50 miler and 50K share a lot of the same trail. With the vast difference in the distances, it's obviously a pretty different, unique experience for sure. The 50K versus the 100.
Right.
But otherwise they're all totally different and not overlapping at all.
So, of all the trails or all the courses that you've designed, two questions for you. One,
Uh-oh.
which is your favorite? I mean,
Yeah.
it's got to be like, I love this course. Secondly, have you ever run any of your own races?
Well, for question number one, as a family guy, and kind of growing these from my own, thoughts and brain, you know, you care about them, and you want them to succeed just like you would your own kids. So that's how I kind of feel like that I treat them you know, as our kids, and you want
Yeah.
to take care of them and grow them and, treat each of them special and all that kind of thing. And so I guess I'm saying that because it's sort of impossible to pick a favorite
Oh,
because they're
yeah.
all different. I guess I'll say Aaron won't get mad at me because he agrees. If I had to pick like a family favorite that we all really enjoy going to collectively, Road Gorge is probably our family favorite
Okay.
event to host. Fall is our favorite season. The foliage and the scenery and the kind of we more or less kind of have the area to ourselves, so it's really this kind of, I shouldn't say private, but kind of it's this collective experience that we all get to share together. The courses are fun and fast. So there's not really, a whole lot of safety concern logistically and all that stuff. So it just, on the whole, it's a really just pleasant experience for all of us
Yeah.
to be there. Where some of the things that come to mind are, we course market together. There's these super old cabins, amongst these, literally 8 foot wide Douglas fir trees that are 1,000 years old, and they're a dime a dozen.
Nice.
It just feels like this. Yeah, I'm not a religious person, but it feels like a spiritual
Sure.
experience being there.
Yeah.
But and then just it's an old historic district. There's 100-year-old restaurant cooking bacon and eggs and pancakes for people and stuff, and the raging river and all that. And it's just a very memorable. Almost, it's becoming like our pastime for us to be down there and trying to figure out ways to get down there more. Yeah, I guess that's probably the one that I would pick for that.
Yeah. And
And what was question number two again?
question two was, have you run any of your own races?
Well, that one's an easy no. I've run all of them, outside of race weekend a zillion times, but no, I've never participated on race day in any of
Yeah.
our races. And part of that is my brother would say I'm too perfectionist and controlling to be able to do that, but because I want to be in charge and make sure everybody's safe and accounted for and all that. And the other reason is, we're just not a huge team. I don't have 10 other staff or, overly committed volunteers or whatever that I would want to pass the reins off and then put that burden on them so that I could go and have fun. So,
Yeah. Share that same I think a lot of race directors that I've talked to share the same sentiment, where it's like, I just make sure everybody's safe and no mishaps happen while I'm on course myself. Touch a little bit about on the community aspect of where you are. I know you had said you'd started out with, group runs, and how has that is that still around? And then are you doing, what sort of programs do you guys have as far as, um, trail conservancy? I mean, are there funds that are going towards a certain trail system? And yeah, just give me a quick into that. So
yeah, totally. Something that has really been important to us, and kind of going back to how I got into, integrated into the sport, was group runs and stuff. So outside of our races, we host a monthly, we call it Daybreak Run Club, and we do monthly, free group runs. We have several that we host from the coffee shop that sponsors all of our races and provides the race morning coffee. We'll do some group runs from there, and then they'll do free coffee, and we'll raffle off a bunch of cool stuff and some race entries and things like that. So that kind of helps us, I guess, stay relevant outside of the events in terms of, just engaging with the community and, not just seeing us on race day type of thing. You know what I mean?
yeah.
We have a beneficiary for every one of our races, a nonprofit beneficiary, and they're all generally different. And because I have a soft spot for stewardships, it's usually a stewardship organization that either has some kind of cooperative agreement to maintain the trails for that particular area,
Right.
or it's like a nonprofit trust that collects funds to be able to afford things on the forest, like footbridges and things like stuff like that oftentimes the land manager cannot afford from their own budget, so they collect, private donations to do that. So we always provide, some kind of meaningful donation from race proceeds for each of our events. Especially this year, in past years, we do a lot of our own trail stewardship. Because our team and we get paid to do a job, so I can't really say we're volunteering when we're out doing trail work.
Sure.
It's also not on race day, so we're out there doing trail work. Aaron and I are both chainsaw sawyers, so we're certified to operate chainsaws on federal land as long as we have, obviously permission and a plan from the Forest Service or a state forest or wherever we're at to be able to go and clear out all the logs. We're in the Pacific Northwest, so a lot of our trails are deep in the forest. It's a normal occurrence in the forest that trees fall down, especially in the wintertime.
Yes.
So yeah, we do a lot of that work ourselves, and we just kind of have it baked into our budget and our workflow that, these days, especially on federal lands, they're not even out there right now because they're shut down. So yeah, I mean, we got to help out, and if we want to have an event, so that's we consider it part of our role is to help keep those trails open.
Yeah. So with as many events as you have, I'm assuming that trail work component, do you guys have sort of initiatives that you put out as a community effort, or is it primarily like, hey, this race is coming up, let's go check out the trails we just ran, so I got this stuff. Like how do you kind of organize that and come to?
It's a little bit of everything because we have 12 events and Aaron and I both have family obligations and all this stuff. We don't have a lot of weekends.
Yeah, well, yeah.
When the families are, when kids are not in school and everything. So honestly, we do a fair good amount of our trail work during the week, which obviously for those efforts, we don't get nearly as many volunteers because people, generally are working Monday through Friday. So we place a huge emphasis on acknowledging the volunteers that are at our events, and we also and at our trail work efforts and all that stuff. And a big component of acknowledging our volunteers is giving them the opportunity to get race credit for their time, and acknowledging their presence. And a lot of folks really appreciate that, and it seems like it goes a long way. And it's a currency that we're able to use that to help folks and incentivize them to come out and do the trail work, or help work the aid station, etc. Especially for the trail work that we do on the weekends, we'll definitely always put a shout out, and we rely heavily on Instagram and social media, and less frequently with newsletters and things like that to drum up support and remind folks, or let them know, hey, this is what we're doing in September or next month. Here's the link to sign up. Come get fed and get a free race entry, and let's go move some dirt.
So before I let you go, where can people find you? And if I were to come, what race would you say you have to run this race? What would be that one race?
Oh, man. Well, obviously you can find us at daybreakracing.com. Everything lives there. And if you've not already been able to tell, I'm an over communicator. So we have a lot of information on our website, especially when you get down to each race page. I try to be as complete as possible so folks get a really clear picture of what options that we offer. And I'm partial to 50 milers. They're kind of my favorite. You get the bang for your buck of the full day's worth of effort and scenery and support and all that stuff, but without the, potentially months of recovery.
From
the longer distance. We have 3 point-to-point 50 milers in our lineup, and it's Tillamook Burn, East Trail Fest, and Rogue Gorge.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm really proud of that, that trio. Yeah. And I honestly think it would be a really cool series, So if I were going to recommend anything, I would say come do one of our point-to-point 50 milers. They're pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So
That sounds good. Thank you so much for chatting with me, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It was super fun.
Well, thanks to everyone who's tuned in to today's episode. And if you want more information, you can find it on our website, terraintrailrunners.com. That's runners with an S. Or give us a follow on the social media channels. Until next time, don't forget to thank your race directors. It really does keep us going. Thank you.